the successes that I saw on my recent trip to Afghanistan. And I'm very pleased that Ajmal Shirzai is on this presentation, and we're going to give him a chance to comment, because he deserves, first of all, huge congratulations for the leadership that has happened. Afghanistan is, you really need to understand the geography of Afghanistan to understand the complexity of the country and some of the issues. Afghanistan is what geologically is known as the middle of the Pamir Knot. That's where 4 major mountain chains come together, and those mountains have created the pocket that is the country of Afghanistan. And into that pocket have come many different ethnic groups over time. But because of the mountain chain that surrounds Afghanistan, you'll see the huge mountain chain that runs through the middle of the Pamir Knot, but there's also mountains around it. There's very little water that comes into Afghanistan. And the lack of water dramatically affects everything about life in Afghanistan. So it's a pocket in the world that is a very special place, and of course it has been visited many times by many different military invasions, and each one has left a certain ethnic group behind, and that has created part of the complexity of the country. For me, I first visited Afghanistan in 1961. Then in 1968, I crisscrossed Afghanistan 4 times, carrying hippies back and forth between Europe and Nepal. And they paid very generously to me, and I, at the end of the summer, made several $1,000s from hippies. And you can see me waving to you out of the driver's seat of my Volkswagen bus that I used to transport hippies. This is a road that I drove. This goes into the Khyber Pass. I drove this last week with Ajmal. There goes my Volkswagen bus driving right through. There was dusty roads in those days. This is up in northern Afghanistan when we had to leave by an emergency route that goes up through the city of Mazar-e-Sharif, which is a fabulous mosque and city in northern Afghanistan. So I have a long emotional involvement with Afghanistan that goes back to 1961, and I love the country and the people deeply. But this is Future Generations Afghanistan. Today, the leadership team has taken on my recent visit. Of course, you can see me, and you can see the generous bodyguard that we were provided by the Taliban. Sadly now, due to a variety of reasons, we don't have a large women contingent on our staff. We do have some, and I'll be talking about it in just a little bit, but most of the senior leadership, in order to be able to move around Afghanistan, because our program is very large, are men. And Stephanie, as you can see, the vests that you provided were much appreciated. Even in the middle of the hot summer, everybody wore their vests. So what are we doing in Afghanistan? Basically today, we do have some other activities. We're providing assistance. We're providing humanitarian assistance through 2 modalities: a food-based intervention in the context of a famine, and a cash-based intervention in the context of the extreme poverty of Afghanistan. We get grants from the UN agencies in order to support this work. And the team in Afghanistan has been extraordinarily successful in getting these grants. They are usually given by district and region in the country. They're usually given very specific deliverables, and the team has developed a real skill in developing these proposals. And so what I will be talking about here is describing our 2 work. One is in food-based and the other is cash-based. This is the overall description. This is not complete, but this is an overall description of the work across, I see this is only Nuristan and Kunar, anyway, where we're reaching 34,000 households. This is, for instance, the work in the eastern region of Afghanistan. You will see down at the bottom of the sheet, there are 839 employees just in the eastern region. And listed are all the employees by different types of occupational involvement. So this is a substantial program if it just in one region we have 839 employees. This is a description for one part of that region, which is Laghman province. And you can see that this program is extremely well organized. They've identified who the beneficiaries are. The training programs, the project awareness, the coordination, the input consists of all the training, whether it's on COVID or on agriculture, or on animals, or on famine relief. So I just want to talk about the extraordinary organization. That's what I'm trying to emphasize here. The program is very well organized. How else could you work in the context of Afghanistan today with the huge number of people? Huge number of people. This is the waiting line for one of our food programs. And this is just the men's waiting line. Okay, so these people have come early in the morning to stand in line to get food assistance during the very real famine. And I want to talk a little bit about that. This is part of the women's waiting line, where they are in line with their kids. And it's really touching. It's, they could be any of our kids, and they're all waiting. They know the rules. They play by the rules. And so here is for the cash line. You start in line, and it's all very well organized. And Future Generations is managing it. You can see the people down there. They all wear their Future Generations hats. And then people start to proceed through the line, in this case, to get the cash assistance. Now, what do they do with the cash? We don't just hand the money out, although we do in a few instances, but basically it's a cash for work activity. So people are getting paid for work that they do. And here is a work crew. In this case, they are cleaning out a canal to bring water to the fields. Remember, this is a desert area, and water is the precious commodity. Here's another canal that is, you can see it's bringing water out of the river, and they're putting in a concrete embankment, and all the people who are lined up and working. We're talking about, obviously, hundreds of people on these projects. So this is a significant work in terms of rebuilding the infrastructure. In the context of war, it's also a significant economic engine in the context. And notice in the background here that where there's a river, there is greenery. Otherwise, you're basically talking about desert. And the reason that there's greenery is because they've developed these canals to move the land. So the next area we're working in is food security. And here is an outline of the work in food security across 10 different provinces of Afghanistan. 10 different provinces covers a lot of Afghanistan. And then under each, I just want to point to the second column, which is the population analyzed. So they're not just giving people help randomly. They go through that district and they figure out who are the deserving people for help. Okay, and in case of Herat, they've analyzed the needs of 2 million people. And then from that, identified what phase of food insecurity stress this phase 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's a very systematic analysis that's happening of in these 10 provinces. The population of Afghanistan is 33 million, I believe, right, as of the present. So how does this work? Let me just show you one of the lines. So this will last several minutes, but it'll give you a sense of the great order and work here. So it's extremely well organized. How else are you going to be giving famine relief in the context of the national scale crisis that's going on in Afghanistan? And this summarizes the system that has been organized by FGA. Where you come in, you go to the help desk, and then there's the stations that you have to move through. And you saw in that earlier video that they have painted onto the ground where you have to walk. You can't cut the line, and you got to stand in line for hours to go through all these stations if you're going to get the assistance from this program. So here you come to the help desk, and you get your chit, and you start to go through the organized system, and then you get on the little walkway, and you start going through the stations. And it was, you can see in the lower right side, this is the documents verification station to make sure you're providing legitimate documentation for your case. There's the help desk earlier, and there's a logbook, which is the next station beyond. And then you get logged into the system, and you get your chit. They get stamped so that we can tell whether you were here this week, the week before, or what's happening. So this very clear organization takes you through the system. And if you don't have a clear organization, obviously you're going to get chaos is immediately going to take place, because people could not only get upset and shout, but they could pull out a weapon or something like that. Obviously, in the food distribution line, we don't allow people to show up with a machine gun. And you have to sign. And you sign week by week. So this week's signature's got to match last week's signature. Here's the food that's waiting. There's a lot. And it's very carefully, it's provided by the World Food Program. It's designed for nutritional benefit. It's carefully figured out what type of food to get. We've got large warehouses, and the Taliban is providing free of cost these warehouses to us. It's a partnership, and I want to talk more about that. And a real congratulations goes to the FGA team for creating this partnership with the Taliban government in the middle of this national crisis. An example of the food. Special formula for children older than 5 years of age and adults. And then nutritional supplements on the right-hand side. Then you take your food home. I mentioned the partnership with the Taliban. It is a partnership. They are providing security for us from theft and thuggery. Okay, and we're working with them, and I'll say more. But there are certain compromises that have to be made. The flag on the vehicle there. This is the escort. You can see the vehicle in the background is the Future Generations Afghanistan vehicle. Stephanie remembers cutting the check to Ashanzia for that check, to buy that car. That car has a GPS in it, so it's being tracked full time wherever it goes. If we need to, we can turn the engine off remotely at any point in time. When I was there, very kindly to give the security, the Taliban gave an escort vehicle in the front, which you see, and then there's a green vehicle in the back, which was also the security in the back. Now, what is really interesting about this picture is this road, because I kept saying, well, this is wonderful. We have this partnership. I appreciate it. We know in the United States, we partner with the US government. In China, we partner with the Chinese government. Obviously, in Afghanistan, we're going to have to partner with the Afghan government. Future Generations and Seed Scale's all about a three-way partnership. But I says, what's the Taliban getting out of it? So Shirzai said to me, well, let me show you an example. So we had a project, was infrastructure development, and the roughest neighborhood in the Jalalabad area, where there was the most violence, the Taliban said, we want you to build a nice big highway with all your all your cash for work project infrastructure development. And so this was a road that was built by the Cash for Work project that you just saw people were laboring on. Well, we built that highway. And now what was an isolated neighborhood, it's got a big road going through it, and this peace and security in this neighborhood has gone down. It also happened to be where a few Taliban commanders lived, so they got a road to their house. So that's the second part of the story, which was, what are they getting out of it? So we have this partnership, and it's really working, okay? And what I wanted to emphasize here is this, okay? So here we have Ajmal talking with the local commander, okay? And the team, that's who's standing behind. And what has been growing in a really very beautiful way is the fact that the Future Generations Afghanistan has been teaching seed scale. This is not my graphic. This is Ajmal Shirzai's graphic. And how he has taken the process and embedded it and included it in his program, and they teach it. And so he has created then this graphic, which is actually an automated graphic, and each of these sections grows. But notice what's on the left-hand side. That's the humanitarian interventions, food security, seasonal support programs, school-based nutrition, farmers assistance, social protection. These are all humanitarian activities that are being on. And then what we're now trying to do is to move to the right-hand side at the same time and to get these two functioning together, which is development interventions. And this is the official vision statement, so to speak, of FGA, and how they're using seed scale as an engine in the middle to do with the humanitarian interventions and to do the development interventions on the right. And it's directly built off of off the seed scale. Look at the interesting idea here. At the beginning of this engine is the 4 principles on the inside. Okay, and then they use the 7 tasks around the outside. And then on this section, the 4 principles are on the outside, changes in community behavior and building on success. So as the engine goes around, the idea is to have the results being manifested then on the frame on the outside. Okay, they've got a model. They've got a pedagogical model here. And they've got the team. And they've got funding through these humanitarian grants. And so that's what, to my mind, was the really impressive thing. We're not just doing very important humanitarian relief. We've got a system going. And we're working in partnership. Okay, we're working in partnership with the system that's there. This is the Future Generations vehicle in the background. Okay, in the background is the food that's being distributed. The guy taking down that little white line, right? He's following the rules. He's taking his food out in his wheelbarrow. And you can see in the background of the picture the little white line that people go in with. So they go in with back. So that in that image, a great deal of information is being told. Now, another cool thing that's going on is that they've started to do research now. And one of the research projects is what they call CREAM. I won't go into the details of what it stands for, but it's a research project where they're seeking to understand through a systematic evaluation project of in one area, which is called Nuristan, one of the roughest neighborhoods in Afghanistan. They're doing research on market, on seed security, and on the context of how to work in the Afghan context. Okay, seed security is the focus because they're trying to bring back food security. And the way to do that is through managing the seeds. Because in Afghanistan, due to the isolation, there's some very precious traditional seeds that are adapted to the ecology. But this is not just going around casually talking. Look, they're doing surveys. They're getting numbers. They're crunching the numbers. Okay, this is very serious evidence gathering under the model that I just showed you of using seed scale with group teamwork. So this is my last image here from this PowerPoint. So of the partnership between Future Generations University and Future Generations Afghanistan. So I did a causal functional analysis with the team, and this is the larger document. First thing we're going to be doing is obviously reconstituting the board of Future Generations Afghanistan. And then in this context, we're going to position the identity in the national culture, not in the culture of donor money, which is where it is right now. So there's an evolutionary process to move from donor money, which we're going to continue to take because you have to use it. I mean, it's there, it's available. But we're going to be moving towards development assistance. And as you know, in seed scale, development assistance is grounded on human energy. So that's the first evolutionary step that's being in the process. And then we're going to evolve the present management structure for organic scaling. And the idea here is to bring decision-making closer to the communities, as in large corporations, because Future Generations Afghanistan is becoming a large corporation with the numbers of people. And so that is different from the hierarchical model that typically NGOs use. So there's a management structure evolution that's going to be happening. There's a major support now that's going to start for 2 employees with staff evaluation, clearer compensation, multi-year contracts, which until now has been all project by project. There's a staff development with seed scale training. And so Future Generations Afghanistan will be sending 10 people to the enrolled in the seed course that starts here in 1 month. They'll be sending several people to the Gandhi residential. We're going to grow the information feedback systems to grow quality assurance. So there's a whole new structure here of information feedback to grow quality. And you saw examples of the beginning of that with some of the research work they're doing. And we're going to create clarification, more understanding for transparency in hiring evaluation, and then, of course, the clarification to the university and the global network, which is important. So the Taliban rule has brought political stability. So the daily dangers to people are lower. You may like the Taliban, you may not like the Taliban. That's obviously an individual's thing, but it's a lot safer in Afghanistan than it was when the international presence was in there 3 years ago on my last visits. International development assistance, which was major, billions of dollars from the different donors, created a culture of corruption under the prior government. And that has created a lot of ancillary problems. So I would argue that the international development assistance, like the military assistance, was perhaps in some negative. And we can talk about that. And what is come now is this whole issue of the ascendancy of Islamic values. I was very interested that in the last 2 days of my visit in Afghanistan, the Taliban had called a Loya Jirga, which is a national gathering. It's a traditional cultural event where you bring together all the tribes. Well, it wasn't this time identified by tribes. It was identified by Islamic faction representations. But the point is they tried to talk and tried to figure out, well, what is the Islamic values that are being extended? They couldn't reach any agreement. The Loya Jirga ended without any agreement. They tried to talk and figure out what is the meaning of Islam. The important point to me here is that the Taliban doesn't know. Okay? The Taliban is not a monolithic force. The Taliban has got big differences among itself as to what Islam means and what has to be done. It isn't what most in America think, a jihadist military invention that is in the process of terrorizing the country. It is people trying to figure out for themselves, what are your values? Well, my colleagues, we can ask that question in every country of the world about what our values are. In this way, we share something very similar to what's going on there. And the next thing I just wanted to sort of talk about is that we have a new functional structure that is taking place. The board of directors is being reconstituted. This is an autonomous board, okay? And so Peter Ide is serving as the treasurer. Peter has a background in finance. He lives in Tunisia. Okay, I will continue as chair, at least for the time being. And Ajmal Shirzai is coming on as secretary. And he will then have, as do I here, he will have a board role, and he will also have a officer role as country director. He'll hold two titles, secretary and country director. And then to go up what I was saying earlier about the corporate model that's following, we will have, at this point, 3 managing directors. One is the managing director of implementation. And this is a person who's going to be using the inside of that engine. In that graphic I showed you are the 4 principles and the 7 tasks. They're managing 1,000 people, okay, in all these 10 provinces that FGA is working in. So that's the managing director who's doing that. Then there's the managing director for quality assurance. And this is the person who's going to be working from the 5 criteria and going to be gathering a monitoring and evaluation system. Okay, so that Future Generations Afghanistan is moving to a learning organization. The way we can extend and improve in development is through seed scale, which is fundamentally a learning process. It's not a service delivery process, because the objective here is to get an ever more skilled Afghanistan, okay, at the community level with community facilities. Then there's the managing director for operations. This runs the finance office, government relations, reports to the Taliban government, procurement, staff performance, so on and so forth. On the running of the government. It was very interesting to me, and no surprise, I'd known this before I went out, but I just want to highlight it, that when you get into the government now, most of the government officers, who are the people who are sitting behind the desk, are the same people who were sitting behind the desk before the Taliban came in. They're the ones who know how to run the computers. They're the ones who know where the files are. And so suddenly they've got a Taliban boss, and the earlier boss of the republic is gone. So the system that basically had been set up over the last 20 years is still there. It's just got a new head on it. Afghanistan is evolving. It's changing. Okay, it isn't the country or the people that the international community was fighting against. Okay, they're trying to take ownership of their future. And what is so exciting to me is that Future Generations University has an opportunity to work with our partner, Future Generations Afghanistan, to help shape that future. And today is a moment of flux where the country is moving and looking for answers. And we, as the Future Generations partners in that process, have an opportunity to help them grow to the future that they want, which is what Seed Scale does. Okay? And so where that's going to go, I don't know. Okay? Nobody knows. But they've got a team under very capable leadership of very dedicated people who are engaged in a life and death issue. And I say life and death because it's a famine. There's massive unemployment. And they're trying to work for their own future. And we've got the opportunity, and we've got the presence, and we have some serious money thanks to the good fundraising of Future Generations Afghanistan and the team in order to help make that future unfold. And it's in our collective interest for the whole world to continue the partnership. And if there's anything that bothers me enormously in this whole process, is that when the Taliban came in, the international people walked out. Okay? This is when we step up and we try to figure out partnerships. We're not fighting a war. At least Future Generations is based on partnerships. So with that, I do want to give a chance for Ajmal Shirzai, who's been on this, to disagree with me, to make some comments. But first, Ajmal, as a dear colleague, I want to say thank you. And since you're an alumna of Future Generations University, we are very proud of what you have achieved with your knowledge in our master's degree. And I believe that Bismillah is also on this call, who is also an alumnus of our master's degree. So I just want to say how you two gentlemen have used your partnership with Future Generations is a matter of honor for this university. Thank you very much. And I turn it over to Ajmal and Bismillah if they choose to comment, and then comments from anybody else.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you for your visit. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your braveness, because I think nowadays it's very much difficult for the foreigners to come to Afghanistan because everyone is scaring while they're traveling from one province to another province. But your visit means that you love Afghanistan and you love Future Generations, and thank you very much for that. I think the progress of Future Generation was not only because of Ajmal Shirzai. Yes, I do my leaderships, but if you, for the last 10 or 12 years that I'm working for Future Generations, we lost 9 or 10 people during official work with Future Generation Afghanistan. Some of them was killed by Taliban, some of them was killed by unknown people, and some of them was shooted by American drone in the rural areas. So at least 10 or 12 people of Future Generation staff was killed in one way or another way by different group of fractions. Same time, we also have the report of a lot of staff that were jailed. For example, we were sitting in the government control area. Our project site was in the Taliban control area, in the opposition group or ICE Taliban areas. When our social organizer did their job in the rural districts, came back to the cities, in the cities they were captured by the NDS people and says, "Oh, how can you implement the project in that area?" So we pass a lot of challenges in Afghanistan, and I think all the progress in this office is the hard work of my team, and I'm very thankful for my team, particularly those people who are working with community. They are the militaries. They are the troop of Future Generations. Because I was sitting next to EC's generator with a good car, with all facilities, but that was my staff who were in the front line and work directly with communities. And I'm very much thankful for those people. And I think that today's progress is because of the hard work of that people. And I'm sure all Future Generations appreciate the work of our field staff. Two other things, Daniel Taylor and distinguished participants, all our project is linked to sustainable development goal. The type of the report that you are submitting to the government, no project is implemented at the output level because all this project is contributing to the achievement of sustainable development goal. That is one issue. The other issue is, why donor loves Future Generations? This is not because we are distributing cash or we are distributing food, but beside this distribution of input, you are creating a system that could be applicable at the situation. For example, managing of distribution camps. If you can see any kind of humanitarian manual, whether that is UNICEF manual, or that is EU ECO manual, or that is spare document, I'm sure you know about all these documents. You cannot see any kind of articles or chapters how to manage a distribution center. This is the Future Generation for the first time. They created these systems, and even this system is a kind of a learning center that a lot of NGOs coming, invited by the donor agency to visit our camp and to learn and to apply it in other areas. So that is another issue. And most of our project is implemented based on research. Research is the main component of our program, and all our decision making about selection of beneficiary will be based on the data. Another issue is that we are proceeding from scatter approach towards strategic approach. And that strategic line was very much interested by WFP. This yesterday, the WFP head of partnership called me and told me that's a very good approach, because if you can bring all scatter project in one region, in that case, they told me that we are creating a kind of economy of scale. It means that we are reducing the administrative cost, unless we cannot have a strong humanitarian program. Because right now, if you can see the situation of Afghanistan, southeast is affected by earthquake, and I think eastern provinces right now, there is all road was blocked to our project area because of flood, and some other eastern part is affected by drought. So in that case, in that type of humanitarian situation, how can we implement the development programs? Why there is no proper government?
Much, Ajmal, and as he referenced, we are highly respected. We are now, I believe, the #1 respected organization by the World Food Program, and we're generally considered among one of the top 5 programs working in Afghanistan. Questions or comments from the table here? I'm going to first give it to Luke, who has spent 2 years in Afghanistan, and then anybody else who wants to comment.
It's really refreshing to hear, especially what Shirzai was just saying about bringing in a very system approach or a strategic approach, because as many people, well, not everyone will know, the first director of the Afghanistan program was Carl Taylor, my grandfather, and I first went to Afghanistan at that time with him for his last trip. And he and I talked a huge amount at that time about a lot of these problems of the dependency that was being created by the international aid system, and that we weren't really building long-term capacity of the Afghans to be able to run their own functional society and community. And that's really, at the end of the day, what we mean when we say community development and not just helping people. And I think it's really amazing to see the way this current team is taking pretty much time of crisis, one after another, warfare, earthquakes, flooding, and using that to really highlight the problems in the historic aid system. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. And from the standpoint of the Community Engagement Division, looking forward in working on that, because the whole world, as you just said, Shirzai, Afghanistan's not the only place with problems. And we need to figure out a way to take these real times of crisis and not just put on a temporary Band-Aid, but also get to the deeper question of how we can fix the system so that it can be more resilient in the future. And I think, that is what the SDLCs and the Community Engagement Division really has as its mandate at a much larger scale. And I look forward to partnering with you on that as we move forward. And I think that that's just some extra context.